What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the New Earth Dreamer podcast. I'm Brian, and today we're going to take our time and talk about our world. If we're going to build a new Earth from the inside out, which we're already doing, but if we're going to make this vision of a world where humanity is healed, knows who they are, isn't worried about survival anymore, and instead is just living, thriving, peaceful, cooperating. We can't keep going so fast. The way that our world is right now and has been is one where people are overworked, have too much to do, have to think too much, have so many worries, and our world is sick. Humanity is sick mentally, physically. We're exhausted. We're tired of the way things have been, but so many just feel hopeless because the people who were once thought of as responsible for leading our society and our world, we don't trust them anymore. But it's not only their fault. It's not really anyone's fault. And that might be frustrating to hear for some, but it's really not anyone's fault when we see the bigger picture of who we are and what's happening here. I really do want to take my time in sharing these ideas because for us all to get on the same page about who we are, what's happening here, and what we'd all like to see. I think it's pretty much unanimous that all of us would love to see a world where we're all free to be who we want to be. Our bare minimum needs are met without us having to work ourselves into the ground, where we have time to rest when we need rest, time to enjoy life, time to make deep, meaningful connections. We all want to know and have a healthy perspective of ourselves in that we know we are loved, we're enough, we're worthy of a beautiful life that feels free and light. And when we take the time to slow down, that's what allows our system to feel safer. So many of us are running around all day in this shallow breathing, and the stress response in our bodies and our nervous systems is just active the majority of the day for most people. So when people do have time to unwind and actually relax and let go of the burdens and the responsibilities of their day to day, the nervous system isn't used to that. It's been programmed by this high stress, high productivity model of living that most of us have bought into because we were told that that's what's going to lead to a good life. But the evidence is obvious when you look at the world. That way of being, it doesn't make sense. Life shouldn't be about making as much money as you can so that you can rest for 20 years before you die. Life is about living. It's about the full human experience. But we've made life so stressful and so difficult that we don't have time to feel the depth of how beautiful being human can be. And I've seen it happen to really good, hardworking people where they work for a long time and they make money and they have a good retirement plan and then they try to settle down, and all those years of stress and working, their minds don't know how to calm down. Their bodies don't know how to calm down. And because they didn't live with a great quality of life and inner peace during the bulk of their life, they don't know how to actually enjoy this retirement. And I've also seen people work really hard and then have what they thought was good retirement plans. And then they get to that time, and for one reason or another, that retirement plan falls through. And then they're left on Social Security, and it's not enough. So the systems that we've created, the way of being that we've created, it doesn't lead to a happy ending, and it doesn't have a happy middle. It has a very stressed out one with a lot of fight or flight. And so when we zoom out and we see that our way of being, it doesn't match who we really are. It starts to make our priorities a little more clear. And so let's talk a little bit about who we are from a very grounded place, a very straightforward place, a place that is rooted in eternal truth. No stories, no dogma, no doctrine, just eternal truth. Because this is what we need to get clear on. Because when we get clear on this, it makes it easier to understand what's important and what is true of us. And so, to understand the eternal truth of who we are, we have to understand the nature of eternity. This is something that's been very confusing to the human mind, because the human mind in these short temporary lives really only understands time and finiteness. It understands beginning and ends. But eternity has no beginning and it has no end. It always was and it always will be. Eternity is what is forever. Now, this universe had a beginning, Earth had a beginning, humanity had a beginning in the way that we see things, in the way that we understand things. But whatever exists prior to that beginning, because something has to exist eternally in order for anything to exist, it's the idea of if there was nothing eternal, then there would just be nothing because there is nothing to create the first something. So something is eternal and it has the ability to create universes and experience. And because eternity has no beginning and no end, what a lot of us need to realize is that you don't get to eternity after this life. You're not here to earn eternity because you're already in it. And if you're in it now, then you always have been. There's no such thing as becoming eternal because eternal has no beginning. So if you think you had a beginning, then that already defies the nature of eternity. So even though we only remember the beginning of this life, sort of, we don't really remember the beginning, right? Because you don't remember being a baby. But we know we had a beginning to this life, but that doesn't mean who you really are beyond this body didn't exist before. And this is what humanity has been trying to understand and trust for such a long time. And that's why we have to see the bigger picture of humanity as well. This is a species that once lived as animals, meaning we had animal consciousness, no self awareness, no mental understanding of life, of self, of reality, of God, of what the universe is, of how any of it works. And over many thousands of years, this species has been gradually evolving. At a certain point, self awareness began very slowly, very gradually in this species. And again, over thousands of years, eventually, we started to develop communities, eventually, civilization of some sort. And now we are at a point where we have advanced so far in our understanding of the material world, but we still haven't gotten totally clear on who we are beyond the human. And understand that beyond the human doesn't mean that you're not the eternal thing now. You don't become an eternal soul after this. You already are an eternal soul who happens to be committed to experiencing this body, which is why you don't float off somewhere else. You stay with the body, you stay with this life. So there's a reason why, when we look at ancient texts and religious texts and all these things, there's certain understandings of what they thought God was, of what they thought reality was, of their understanding at the time of these things. And because there was so much pain and fear and suffering and illness and disease and all these things, people wondered, why would God create such a place that seems to be so difficult and painful? And their understanding at the time was that God must be punishing certain people for certain things. Because why else did everyone have all this sickness and all this pain? It didn't make sense to them. They thought either there is another force called evil that is harming people or possessing people, and or they thought God was a very judgmental God that condemned and punished people for certain things. And that was what most people thought. But as we've learned now in our modern world, people getting sick isn't a punishment. Pain isn't a punishment. It's a symptom of something else that's happening. Now, there's a lot of theories as to this, as to why this is. The leading theory in the world, at least in the Western world, is the germ theory. The idea that we live in a world filled with harmful viruses and bacterias and things like that. But there are a lot of conditions and symptoms and things that happen in the body that are not related to viruses at all. And so then we think, oh, well, some of us just have a faulty body, a body that doesn't work that well, a body that has things going wrong with it, deformities, defective things. And all of this still has to really, we have to ponder and consider, okay, maybe the creator isn't punishing us directly for things we've done with illnesses and diseases and all these things. But did the creator create a world where we are subject to all these seemingly random attacks or a defective body that always has something wrong with it? And are any of these theories really loving? Because then it feels like our survival is just random. You could get sick at any time. Something could go wrong in your body at any time and for no reason at all. That's the theory that most people live by. And so they don't want to be around sick people because they don't want to get sick. And so we isolate people who are hurting and sick and going through uncomfortable things. And that's not very loving. And that's again why we have to go back to who are we really in eternity? Because when we understand who we are eternally, all of this starts to make more sense. So something has to be eternal, right? Let's go back to that, right? In order for anything to exist at all, something has to have always existed without a beginning. Now, the beauty of our modern world is that some of our sciences have become so advanced in understanding the very nature of reality that it starts to give really, really powerful and beautiful evidence as to who we really are. Quantum physics has shown us that we are not a physical world. We have the experience of physicality, but solid physical matter as solid objects in space, in a solid universe. That's not what reality is. Quantum physics has shown us that everything is energy. All of the atoms, all of the particles, they are not static, solid objects in space. They are energy coming into vibration. And they're coming into vibration out of an eternal, infinite, formless field, which they call the quantum field. And somehow, out of this field, and understand this field is formless, it's not made of anything, it's not made of a substance, it's not made of a material, it's not a big ball of energy in the center of the universe. This formless field is formless, intelligent, eternal awareness. And how do we know that? Because out of this field comes an incredibly intelligent universe of form. Every atom, every particle, every vibrating bit of energy coming into form knows exactly what it's supposed to be in every moment. And at the atomic level, they're all pretty much the same. There's nothing markedly different about any of them. Yet somehow they're all moving in this perfect dance and transforming and evolving and shifting and moving in a way that is coherent and cohesive, that allows for an entire universe to evolve. And some parts of that universe, at least, are aware of itself, like us, because we are aware of ourselves. We are aware of the universe. We are conscious and we are learning, we are growing, we are evolving, we are becoming more conscious and more aware. So, of course, this infinite, eternal, formless source has to be the intelligence, the awareness that can create and experience anything. And so, what is that besides God? Besides what we are trying to understand of God? And what this points to, which is maybe the most important part of this entire podcast episode, is the understanding that everything is made of God. The entire universe, the earth, every human being, we are made of divine intelligence. And so then we really have to ask ourselves, did this infinitely divine intelligence that creates entire universes, that knows everything. Why wouldn't it? It's the eternal source of everything. And it's a well known spiritual and esoteric understanding that God, source, is all knowing. So if it knows everything, and if it is everything and everyone, would this source create a world in which random attacks for no reason at all from microscopic things that we can't see, would that source create a world like that? Or did we create that? And I don't mean that in a nefarious way, like, oh, somebody in some lab created this virus and unleashed it on the world. That's not what I'm saying. We have to understand who we really are. We are made of divine intelligence. We are conscious beings in a infinitely intelligent universe experiencing what it's like to be human. But who decides what it's like to be human? And who decides our future? And who decides what we put our focus on? And who decides what we believe? All of that is in our hands because we have free will. We are free to believe what we want. And because we are a species, we are experiencing a species that is evolving over many thousands of years from unconscious or no self awareness into self awareness and eventually into fully self realized self awareness where we know who we are. There has been a lot of misunderstandings and fears throughout history that at the time made sense to us. And at the time, we experienced it as if it was real. But just because we experienced it at one time doesn't mean that it will always be true. What we believe has a direct impact on what is created in our physical reality. What we believe has a direct impact on our bodies, on our health, on the type of world that we create. And so, for thousands of years, we have been trying to understand why. Why do our bodies seem like such a burden? Why do they feel so heavy? Why do they hurt? Why are we sick all the time? Because we are divine intelligence, because we are designed to wake up and remember who we are, because this is not a cruel existence. When we don't know who we are and we believe in distortions and fears, worried about, well, what if this is the truth? What if this painful, difficult, harsh idea is the truth? And we believe a bunch of this stuff. We believe a lot of detrimental things about ourselves. We hold on to shame and grief and fear and anger and resentment. And we have all these beliefs about ourselves that are not healthy or in alignment with eternal truth and eternal love. That creates incoherence, not just in our minds, but in our very cells, because our cells are made of divine intelligence. So they're listening to us. And when we are incoherent in our understanding of ourselves, if we don't see reality clearly and lovingly, this creates incoherence in our energetic fields. It creates incoherence in our nervous system. It creates incoherence in our cells, in our organs. And this leads to physical conditions. And in order for us to heal, we have to first be committed to remembering who we are and seeing ourselves through the eyes of love. How does this infinite and eternal source see us? Because this source is the only thing that exists. It loves all of itself unconditionally. It's not judging and condemning people. God is not judging and condemning people or punishing people. God is unconditionally loving, which does mean that God honors the free will of each being. But that doesn't mean God stops loving you when you choose not to see yourself clearly, whether consciously or unconsciously. And so, a very difficult truth is to understand that we are eternal, that we chose to have this human experience, that we chose to take part in this story of a species called humanity that is evolving over a very long period of time. And to understand that many of us came in to these lives to do deep healing work, because this species has lived in a lot of fear, a lot of distortion, worried about their survival, a lot of pain, a lot of disease. And right now, we are at a crucial point in our evolution where many of us are waking up to these eternal truths and to this new paradigm, because we want to see a world in which humanity knows who they are, understands that we are co creators, who are one with our source, and that our source wants to support us unconditionally if we will allow ourselves to work with it and receive that help. Because our source loves us, and our source was never withholding love. We've just lived in a very harsh reality because we didn't know who we were for so long. And so, generation after generation after generation of pain and trauma being passed down, now we have an opportunity to heal. But our world currently is not set up to support that, because healing for us requires us to stop making survival something you have to earn and work hard for. When we understand that we are eternal beings having a temporary human experience, and that we are all one, all of the same source, and that source is love, which means all of us are love, even if we don't remember it right now in this life. When we get to that place, we realize we have made life way too hard on ourselves, that there's been these hierarchical systems of control, which were innocent at first, to try and keep us safe, to protect us when we didn't know who we were. But as we wake up to who we are, we realize that these systems of control are not good for us anymore. And now we need to restructure our minds and our world so that we have time to rest and heal, so that we stop trying to prove ourselves, prove our worthiness, stop trying to earn love and safety, and instead realize that we have everything we need here and now to take care of each other, to support each other, to make survival, meaning the needs that we have, housing, food, healthcare, leisure, and resting time. We have all the resources we need. We have all the people we need. We have the technological capabilities that we need. We have everything that we need to take care of each other. But if we can't slow down enough to even make this realization, if we're too busy to even consider these ideas and to consider maybe our world and our life could be much more loving and easygoing if we actually just allowed ourselves to believe that we were worthy of that, that we are loved that much, that it is as easy as making the choice collectively that this is what we're going to do now. To put our pride and our ego and our preconceived notions and assumptions aside, to stop living in the past, to honor our past, right? If we have pain that's coming from the past, obviously there are parts of us that don't feel like we've honored our past and felt what we needed to feel. But a lot of us haven't felt safe enough to feel it because we can't slow down to feel things because we're too busy trying to make it, trying to get by. And that's part of the disease. That's part of the sickness of humanity is us thinking that there's not an easier way to be, that there's not a better way to be. That if you're not pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps and working your ass off and hustling and grinding away in this world, then, well, anything else is just a pipe dream. It's not realistic. But as it turns out, when enough people believe in the same ideas, that's what our reality becomes. And so, in some respects, I am asking people to believe, not demanding, but asking people to believe in something that seems too good to be true. That if we want a softer life in reality, the infinite and eternal creator is not withholding that from us. If we choose it, the way will unfold. And that's what it means to trust and surrender to God. You don't have to know how. You just have to know what you're choosing and why. The why is important because it's what allows you to commit to it, to believe in it. It's what makes it meaningful and powerful. We don't want an easier life just to have an easier life because we want to be lazy. We want an easier life because we want people to actually be able to enjoy life and feel good and heal their bodies. And we want future generations to not live with the same pain and traumas and suffering that we went through. Because we want to see humanity thrive. Because we believe in something greater than just ourselves. And because we understand that if we want to create a better future, we have to be more optimistic and we have to have a bit more faith. And that's why understanding that we are eternal, there's nowhere to get to. You're already loved infinitely and unconditionally by the Creator. And that's all that really matters. You're already worthy. You're already enough. You're already loved. You're already supported. You're already eternal. You have nothing to prove. And when we realize that that's true, and we still have all this pain and unrest and difficulty in us, we realize that's just old trauma patterns and parts of us that are upset that the truth was so much more loving than we ever knew before. And that's the healing work that we have to do is to honor those parts who helped us survive. Honor the parts of us who did the best they could to protect us when we didn't know a better way. And when we do that, eventually, over time, we come back to peace, inner peace. And that leads to coherence. And that leads to great health and well being. And that is what each of us deserve. Thank you guys for listening. If you feel called, please subscribe, follow along for more episodes. And I love you all. Have a good rest of your day.